just remember during the summers, HBO, if you remember HBO, like they would play porn at a certain time. And I was waiting for that time and I would just stay up just so I can watch it. And that's what I would do during my summers was watch that. But later down the line and when I was in high school is when I became really addicted to it. Hey guys! So I want to share my testimony from my upbringing up to the point of me being saved. I realized that I don't have a full video, that it's in parts that I share my testimony. So in this video, I want to share everything with you. So I was raised Catholic, but we weren't really religious or anything like that. We didn't go to church. The only time I went to church as a child was with my cousin because I stayed the night at my cousin's house a lot. So that was the only time I went. My parents never went. We didn't have a Bible in our home. My parents just had rosaries, and when we prayed, it would be to Mary. And like I didn't really have a relationship with God, and my brother and my sister didn't either. And I guess my parents didn't either. I mean, they had a relationship with God, but obviously not with Jesus, and that's how we were raised. I have an older brother and I have an older sister. With my brother, it's 8 years apart, and with my sister, it's 7 years apart. So that's like a huge age gap. I basically grew up by myself, and my brother and my sister, they had each other. I would say that we weren't really close like that. Like I would have seasons where I was close with my brother and seasons of me being close to my sister. And in high school, my brother and my sister were close, but I don't really think we were all close together like that. I was close with my parents, obviously, because I was the baby. So I was very close to my parents growing up. And also, to add into that, growing up, my parents were very strict. They didn't let me go to the park. That was literally across the street from me. I couldn't go to no football games. I couldn't stay the night at people's houses unless it was my cousin. Yeah, I couldn't really do anything. My friends were only allowed to go in front of my house. They weren't even allowed inside my house. Nobody was allowed in my house. But in a way, like, I'm glad because that protected me from a lot of things. But things were happening at my cousin's house, which I'll get into. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can really say from that. So I'll talk about the first door that was open in my life, and that was pornography. Basically, like I said, I would stay the night at my cousin's house a lot. So I remember one night I stayed the night, and my two cousins, they share a room, and I realized that my cousins weren't in the room. And so I go and look for them, and I see that they're in the living room, and my cousin had her friends over, and I see that they're in the living room, and there I see it, them watching porn on TV. Like it was a TV show. It was crazy. I was like, what? I don't really remember like the age, and I don't remember if I like went into the room with them or I went back to the room and like acted like I didn't see anything. But after that moment, I just became very curious and wanted to see what I saw on TV. And back then you didn't have that access like you do now. So I was like really trying to find it and trying to find it in movies because they're always trying to add that into movies, a small little clip. So I was looking for that even in movies. I just remember like during the summers, HBO, if you remember HBO, like they would play porn at a certain time. And I was waiting for that time, and I would just stay up just so I can watch it. And that's what I would do during my summers was watch that. But later down the line and when I was in high school is when I became really addicted to it. I kind of had no shame, and I was on the track team, and so I was like asking one of the guys like, oh, do you like watching porn? Because I do. Like, I'm addicted to it. Like, I love it. I'll just like brag about it. Like, it was just very, sad. I'm gonna talk about the second door that was open in my life, and that was masturbation. I don't remember the age in this neither. I just remember I was playing on the big kids playground, and I was just minding my business. I was, playing on the playground, and then I go down on this pole, and then that's when it hit me, and that's when I had that first feeling. Like it was just like a drug, like instantly my eyes just opened up, and like I was just like, whoa, like what was that? After that, like I was just so addicted to that feeling. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that it felt good, and after that I was just humping anything and everything, and I was trying to master this thing. I was trying to be good at it. I would say that by the time, I get older and start having sex, then I would be good at this. It was just sad. This was my secret sin. Like, I was going through this and I couldn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody. I almost got caught a couple times by my mom, but I would just try to play it off. This is just something that had taken over my life, and it was just a very stronghold. These two things, pornography and masturbation. And I had this stronghold from whatever age that was up until the age of 26. It was just something that I was struggling with a lot of my life. When I was younger, I didn't feel too much guilt, like, oh, what I'm doing is wrong. I was just so focused on that. Like, I was just a kid, like, I didn't care about anything. But later, like in my 20s, then I started to kind of feel like weird about it. It felt like somebody was in the room with me, or it felt like I was entertaining the thing that was in the room. And sometimes, like, I didn't care, and I was like, oh yeah, like, whoever's watching me, you're getting pleasure out of this. And I got pleasure out of it, or sometimes it would just make me feel weird. Okay, this is kind of weird, and I would stop. Or I would just like hurry up and get it over with. And also with that too, my dreams were just weird. Like, even in my dreams, I would have dreams about me masturbating and, just like having orgasms in my dream. I thought I was like mastering it, like, dang, like even in my dreams I'm doing this. And also too, like, it just felt like demons were having sex with me, or like it just felt like they were caressing me and stuff. And still, even after I got saved and delivered and stuff, I was still struggling with dreams like that. Even though I wasn't doing it or thinking about it, like, I was still dreaming about those things, and it was just an icky feeling. It was just weird. I didn't like it. It took a while for me to actually fully get delivered from that, but praise God, that He delivered me from that. And that's just how my life was with this thing. That's all I could really think about. I don't want to say that the third door that was opened in my life was me being boy crazy. I was just very, very boy crazy. I was very desperate for love and just looking for it in the wrong places. And, I always had a boyfriend from third grade up until I was 27, 28. And yes, I know third grade, that don't count, but that was just the reality of my life, is that I was always in a relationship, in and out of relationships. I was just so desperate for love. And I just thought that it was okay because I grew up seeing my cousin like that. When I was in elementary school, she was in high school, and I would see her going on different dates with different guys, and nobody corrected her and told her, hey, don't do that, and hey, you don't deserve that, like, you're good enough. I would see her going on these dates, and for me it was just like normal. And that happened in my life also, just dating different people, and nobody telling me like, hey, you're enough, like, you don't need to live this life, like, you're good. Nobody corrected me. Like, my mom, even young in elementary school, would just be like, oh, that's cute, but never telling me like, no, you're too young for that, or nothing. That was just like my life. And I feel bad for her because nobody told her anything, and she ended up getting pregnant at a very young age, and that relationship didn't work out, and ended in a divorce. That's not really what God has planned for us. And I just don't think that it's normal that my life was like that, because like, I had friends in high school that never had a boyfriend, and outside of high school, the first boyfriend that they had was their husband, and with them they had a family. I was just not normal out of my friends, just having all these relationships. And also, I would say, like, the shows and the things that I was surrounded by had an influence on me too, like watching dating shows and seeing my cousin, and like, they had this thing that they would be on a call, and it would be like different people on the call, and basically like you find your partner on this call. Just different things that I was surrounded by that had an influence. And as I got older in relationships, I was just crazier, toxic, aggressive. I was just crazy. In a way too, like, I just became hyper. I can't really explain it, or I don't know how to explain it, but I was just like hyper in that way. Like, I feel like that's when Jezebel entered my life, and I was just very promiscuous, sexual, and just things like that. I don't know how to explain it. I used to sexualize myself, and I used to sexualize women. Like, when I would masturbate, I would think about women. I was looking at women too, and I struggled with my identity. I grew up a tomboy, but then, in high school I started to become something else, that I was just confused, like maybe I'm bi, like maybe I like girls too. And you know, because also I was hanging out with my sister, and you know, my sister is gay, and so I was around her friends, her lifestyle, and you know, I was also hanging out with my brother and his friends, and you know, them being guys and checking out girls, and I would check out girls with them, and you know, there's just a lot of confusion in my life. I just didn't know what I wanted. But in all of that hyperness, I had decided to wait until I graduated high school to have sex. I was just basically preparing for it as I got older. You know, I kept my promise. I didn't have sex until after high school. But in high school, you know, in that waiting period, I did do stuff, you know, my sophomore year, my junior year, a lot of my senior year. You know, my first relationship that, you know, I really love this person. I let them touch me, but I didn't touch them, and I didn't kiss them. I was like traumatized with kissing, so I didn't kiss anybody probably until like my senior year. And then my junior year, I ended up dating this guy that I met on the track team, and like I was with him most of my senior year, and you know, we did other things, but we didn't have sex until, you know, we graduated. And in that relationship, I didn't become addicted to sex. It wasn't until after that relationship. In that relationship, it was just very toxic, very, very toxic. And I was just so young, like I thought I loved him, and you know, I wanted to have a baby with him. I wanted to marry him, and you know, I just wanted to have a life with him. But you know, he wasn't ready for all that, and he was just too toxic. Anyways, you know, he had cheated on me. He was in another relationship or just talking to other women when he was with me. I was so young being in this relationship, and you know, because things weren't working out, like I wanted to end my life. You know, I thought about it, taking pills or hanging myself in my backyard. You know, I just couldn't handle it at 17. Like, it was just too much. Like, for me, he was my world, and my world was collapsing, and I just didn't want to live. And of me crying out to God and asking him if he was real. Oh, by the way, like I said, I really didn't have a relationship with God, and probably in this time was the only time I was asking God for anything. And I was just treating him like a genie and telling him, like, God, if you're real, make this relationship work, and if it doesn't work out, then you're not real. And you know, God was just protecting me. He didn't make the relationship work, obviously. And after that, like, I just became atheist because God didn't answer my prayer, and like I was crying out to him and asking him for help to help me. And in my eyes, you know, I didn't think he helped me, and I was just like, well, I don't believe you. And I hated God after that. And in this relationship, it was just like really sad because, you know, he would like go out with his friends, and I would just be at home like waiting for him to come home to me, you know, like drunk. And you know, after he was done having fun with his friends, like who knows what he was doing. You know, it was just like very sad. You know, he spent more time with his friends, and you know, we didn't really do much. And yeah, I remember at one point his parents ended up moving, and basically my parents took him in because he had nowhere else to go. And you know, when he was living with me, he was doing those things of like cheating on me, and so like I just couldn't take it, and I just ended up kicking him out, and he ended up moving to Texas. And even then, him in a different state, like I still wanted to make it work, and I was like still willing to try. Like I was even thinking about moving to Texas. Like it was just very sad. And I think too, that's when like the enemy lied to me and told me like, oh, we're not worthy of marriage or kids. You know, look, it didn't work out. You know, you're good. Like, you don't need marriage. You don't need kids. And for a long time, I didn't think I was worthy of marriage, and I didn't think about marriage after that. Just believing the enemy's lies until I was 24. Well, with that guy, we ended up losing our virginity to each other, and it was just sad. Like, I can't take that back, and I wish that I could, but I can't. You know, in a way, for me, it just feels like you take away from, you know, your partner. You know, God is still renewing my mind in that, but you know, it's just, it does suck. But God saved me. After that relationship, I dated other people. After that is when I became addicted to sex. Like, all I wanted to do was just have sex. Like, I guess what got me addicted to it is because, you know, I didn't realize that, you know, you can have an orgasm in sex. So I'm just like, whoa, like, that was like a whole nother thing for me. You know, instead of like doing it to myself or by myself, you know, in sex, this happens too. Like my world just, it was mind blowing for me, you know, and that's why I was like, whoa, like I love sex. You know, and all of that in my 20s, like I was just so lost. Got into astrology, numerology. I was into the new age, crystals, doing yoga, meditating. I got into psychedelics. I was doing shrooms, acid, You know, I thought it was peace and love, and oh my gosh, this is the best feeling ever, and it was just really a lie, you know, because I was only feeling happy for that moment, but then after that, like, I would go back to reality, and I didn't like reality, and I just wanted to be in that state of mind all the time of being happy. All of it was just a lie. Also too, like, I just had no emotion. I was just trying to think like a man, like getting what I wanted, not thinking about what I was doing was wrong. Like, I was thinking like a man so much that I wanted to be a man. That's just how confused I was. You know, I would see these women around me that were heartbroken, and I wanted to change my body and be a man, and be a man in their life, because I'm like, well, men aren't doing their job, like, I'm gonna do it for them. I really thought about it too. I really came to mind, like, you know, I want to be a man. I was just confused on my identity. Because even as a young child, I would play house with my cousin, and I always wanted to be the boy. I always wanted to be the son, and having the girlfriend and everything. Like, I don't know, it was just crazy. But really, I just wanted to have fun. Like, I even thought about getting my own apartment just so I can have fun, so I can have sex with women, see what it's like, so I can have orgies, I can have threesomes, like just living my best life in downtown Phoenix. And just living that artist life. Like, that's really all I wanted to do. I really cared about. I was like, this is it right here. Living an artist life and just having sex is the best life ever. You know, as I said, you know, I was addicted to porn at this point in my 20s. And like, the porn even got more weird too. And that's just like how sin is. It's nasty, and you just want more and more and more and more. Porn was regular at first. It was just a man and a woman. And then it was trans people. Then it was one chick and 5 different dudes having sex with her. Then it was like the stepdad and the stepdaughter having sex, and you know, or like the stepson sleeping with the stepmom, and you know, it just became weird. So weird. And the sex got weird too. Like, it was like on some dominatrix thing, like just freaky stuff, you know what I mean? It was just weird stuff. You know, I was very insecure of myself. You know, like I said, I would check out girls just to make it seem like I'm confident in myself, but really I was not. I was jealous, and I was trying to keep it cool, but really I just was breaking down inside. Like, I would just compare myself, and I just didn't think I was good enough, like my body wasn't good enough. It was just so sad. And I was just dressing provocative. I had no shame in my game. I showed off my body. I didn't care who was seeing, who looked at me. I don't care. I just wanted the attention, but it was kind of like low-key. Like, I wanted people to look at me, but then when they would look at me, I'll be like, you know, like acting all shy and stuff. But I knew what I was doing, and I wanted the attention at the end of the day. You know, I was really exposing myself on the internet. Like, I was like posting inappropriate photos of myself, you know, in lingerie. I was sending people nudes. Like, I was sending freaky tweets and stuff like that. Like, you know, I just wanted to be known as a freak. I don't know. I just wanted to be known as that. And like, eventually I started making music, and like, I had made a whole album, and it was just like on some freaky stuff, inappropriate stuff, provocative stuff. You know, I just did not care. And while I was dating all these different people, I don't know what made me think that I was an angel, that whoever looked my way when I wasn't in a relationship, which didn't last long, you know, and somebody else is paying attention to me, and then I'm like, okay, well, this is my next assignment. So I would just see people as my next assignment. And for me, like, I just felt like I was an angel. I was there to make their lives better, but in reality, I was just making their life worse. I have hurt people. I have used people. I left them worse than what the relationship started with. Like, I left it worse. I left them worse. I wasn't saving anybody. It's not my job to save anybody, but that's just the way I was thinking at that time in relationships. I'm here to make their life better. You know, it's just, oh man, I messed up some people's lives, man. And it was just sad, man. Like, anybody who gave me attention, like, I would just date them. And like, you know, I had a type. If they were cute and my type, like, I would definitely date them. Knowing nothing about this person, and you know, just, man, that's crazy. Like, taking risks and just dating anybody, man. Oh gosh. I was in the situationship when I was 24. It wasn't even a relationship. It was literally just a situation that I was in. In that situationship, he gave me hope again, and he talked about God, and I would see him, you know, read the Bible here and there, and he would talk about God and, you know, the order of the family, that it's God, then it's your wife, then it's your kids. And, you know, I just had hope again, you know, to have a relationship with God again, and just hope that, you know, hey, maybe marriage is for me. That's when I started to think about marriage again. I love the idea of marriage, you know, because I was so in love with him. I thought I loved him and I wanted to marry him, but he didn't want a relationship with me, and you know, that in itself was just sad because I just wanted him and he didn't want me, and you know, he just kept me around. We were in that situation for probably like 2 years on and off because, you know, I would just come in and leave his life and then come back and then leave, but he would take me back. But you know, that was going nowhere. In that situationship too also is why I started to think like a man, because I knew that he was sleeping around with other people. I wanted to kind of get on his level and be like, oh well, I could do this too. I got to the point where if one person wasn't available to have sex with me, then I would have somebody else as my backup. Like, it was just this toxic way of thinking, and really I was just trying to keep up with him, or you know, I was just trying to make it seem like, yeah, hey, I could do what you do and not feel anything about it. But in reality, it killed me. I was very sad about it. You know, sad that I was sharing him, sad that, you know, I knew that he was sleeping around with other people, but that I still wanted him, and it really did hurt me. It really did hurt me. I just did what I could in that moment. But the weird thing is though, that he was talking about God, and he would talk about how bad the industry is, the music industry, and how demonic it is and all that. Like, he would just talk about darkness but not really light, and he would not talk about Jesus, and he wouldn't talk about the Holy Spirit. I didn't really know those things anyways, but he never really talked about those things. It was just always darkness, and I knew a lot about what was going on in the music industry because of him, and I was just like, well, that's crazy. Eventually that situation ended, and he ended up marrying somebody else, and I was just shocked by it because it just seemed like he was never even going to be in a relationship, and then all of a sudden he got married. I mean, praise God that God saved me from all these relationships. God really was protecting me even when I wasn't following him. God was always around and keeping me safe, because I would put myself in situations that were not safe. I would go out a lot by myself and explore. I'm living this adventurous life, and oh my gosh, thank God, God always protected me. And after that situationship, I ended up dating somebody else. I don't even know why I dated that person. Then after that person, I dated my latest ex, which that was the last time I've ever been in a relationship, and that relationship was also toxic. But I could say that in that relationship I did learn a lot. I learned to have a relationship with God, a real relationship. I got baptized, I started going to church. I learned to be celibate in this relationship because, like I said, I have this addiction, and starting off in this relationship, we did start off having sex. He just felt guilty and shame because he was a Christian, not an on fire one. I think maybe a lukewarm, but he felt guilt and shame and said he couldn't do it anymore. And I'm just like, what? You know, and he was just like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. It's either we're together and, you know, we stop until marriage, or there's no relationship. And I'm just like, well, I love you. So I ended up choosing the relationship, and I learned to be celibate. You know, in that relationship, I also stopped smoking and I stopped drinking. So, I mean, the relationship was kind of good, but mostly bad, because in that relationship, I was very stressed because we would argue a lot. I lost so much weight, I couldn't even recognize myself. I was so skinny because I was just stressed and depressed, like anxious, a lot of things. You know, I would see him have a relationship with God, and I would see him make time for God in the mornings. And, you know, before I used to be so clingy and I just wanted to be with him all the time. And him, like, he loved his space. And me, I wanted to be in his space. So the times that he would go and spend time with God and read the Bible, like, I would just be like annoying and be like, oh, well, why don't you read your Bible with me? Like, why do you have to be so far away from me? Like, I want to join, you know? But really, I was just there just to bug, like, be there with him. Like I didn't really have that connection with God yet. Like, I just wanted to be with him. That was really all I cared about. Not really because, oh, okay, this will benefit me and I'm learning. No, I was just being annoying. And in that relationship, man, we just went through a lot of things. We ended up living together, and then I kicked him out because he had something on his phone that I didn't like, and even though he had confessed to me, it was too much for me, and we were going through a lot. And back then, I just acted right away. I wasn't processing or thinking things correctly. Like, my reaction was just, oh, like, get out of my house. When our relationship first started, he ended up moving in with me and my brother, And you know, at first it was going good, and then I remember one day, like, he had confessed to me that, you know, he was doing things, looking at things that he wasn't supposed to, and he was dealing with that, and I was dealing with something myself too. I was looking at women on the internet, on Instagram. Like, I used to be friends with like strippers on Instagram, and I would just watch them like twerk and stuff, and I started to feel guilty. Like, in this relationship, I started to feel guilty, and I'm just like, this is kind of wrong. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. Like, I'm in a relationship, and I eventually want to marry this person. So, you know, as a woman, like, looking at other women, like, it's not really a big deal, you know. And so that was like my mindset. And when he confessed to me saying, you know, he was doing stuff, and so I ended up confessing to him, and he got mad at me because I ended up confessing with him, and he was just like, well, if I never confessed, you would have never confessed. And, you know, he was just upset about it, even though, like, we were just confessing to each other. But in him confessing, like, he still had the evidence in his phone. I mean, if you're gonna come clean to somebody, you're gonna come clean. Like, you're gonna delete the stuff. But that didn't happen for his case. Like, I think he just wanted to just say it, you know, and I guess I'll delete it later. I remember after that conversation, like that weekend, we ended up, you know, going to this place because I wanted to make a music video, and everything was just going great. Then there was like a field, and there was cows, and he was just like, oh, let me record you with the cows. And I'm like, okay. And then so he recorded it on his phone. And then I'm just like, oh, let me see it. And then so I go on his phone, and he was just like, I could see him like staring at me, like sweating, you know, like, oh my gosh. And there I saw the photo, and it was of Brianna in lingerie, and I just flipped. I was like, you dog, you this, that, you know, like, I was very hurt. Even though he had confessed to me, I was still hurt, because I'm like, why would you still have this photo? And it just blew up, and it was just a whole argument, and you know, I ended up kicking him out. But the reason why, like, I kicked him out and had like no remorse is because he had done something behind my back. He ended up renting out a space, like, for him to have a studio for his music and everything, and he wasn't secure in our relationship. He thought that, you know, someday something can happen and I need a backup plan, like, I need a place to be at. And so I was so quick to kick him out because, well, I mean, well, you bought this studio, just if something like this happens, and you know, you have a place. So, you know, I was just hurt, and I was very hurt. I just couldn't deal with it. And, you know, I ended up kicking him out, and he's just like, well, I don't have anywhere to go. I'm like, well, you have your studio. You know, just being petty, like, heartless, you know. He was just also aggressive. I remember I was like trying to pack his stuff, or he ended up pushing me up against the door and like bruised my finger, you know, or like he would just like pick me up and just throw me on the bed, like, you know, he would just toss me around and stuff. Like, he was aggressive and also like just manipulative. I don't know, that's just, the relationship was just really bad. You know, we still got back together, still tried to work it out. And then another situation happened, and we ended up breaking up. We weren't together anymore. He didn't want to make it work. Like, he was done. Didn't want to get back together. And I was just like crying and kind of like begging, like, come on, like, let's just make it work. And he was just like, no. And at that point, he ended up just getting his own apartment. Like, something happened for him that he was able to have his own apartment. And so, like, we weren't living together at this point. And then, you know, that breakup had to happen because then I had my first encounter with Jesus in my room. Because I was just heartbroken. I was just crying. Like, everything reminded me of him. I was looking for the signs, you know, that God was gonna make it work. I had my encounter with Jesus in my room, and then like I just had repented because I'm like, oh my gosh, Lord, forgive me. Like, you know, God removed the veil from my eyes, and I was able to know what it's like to have a relationship with the one who made you. You know, I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, I'm so sorry that I got in between you and your son. Like, you know, please forgive me. Now I know, now I understand. So after that encounter, like, I was just like on fire for God, like so in love with God. I just wanted to know everything about him, and I was just so hungry and thirsty for him. And like I said, we were going to church, and in that church it was just basically the pastor and his family, like nobody really my age. Like, the funny thing is I was like trying to get back on YouTube and trying to make videos, and I remember like I was trying to record this video, and you know, some random guy was just walking his dog, and his dog came up to me, and he had a Jesus sweater on, and he was just like, hey, you know, I go to this church, you should check out my church and blah blah blah. And I was like, hey, well, I'll go, I got nothing else to do, you know, I'm trying to get over this relationship, you know, try not to think about this relationship, like, okay. And so I ended up going, and like he introduced me to a lady there, and she was having one-on-one Bible studies with me, and then they had like a young adults group, and I joined it, and I was just so happy, just on fire for God, like everything was going good. But then at the same time, you know, I was like praying for this relationship and like praying for him as like my husband and all that, like God was gonna make it work. And I was like, it was crazy, like I was on fire for God, wanting to know more about God, but then I was like praying for this relationship. And then, you know, I was still in contact with him, not as much as before obviously, but you know, we had some kind of contact. And you know, I was like still begging him, like, let's make this relationship work, like now I know like how to have a relationship with God, like come on, like we can do this together. And finally he took me back and we tried to make it work. Like when we got back together, like, you know, I just was on fire, and he didn't like that fire, and he was just like, oh well, you're acting brand new, like don't forget where you came from and this that, like, you know. And it just like made me feel horrible. But then like, you know, when I was hanging out with the young adults and being around like other Christians, like I felt like I wasn't Christian enough, and like I was like trying to be something that I wasn't, like trying to be kind of perfect. Yeah, I'm a Christian, blah blah blah, like I don't do this and I don't do that, you know, like it was just kind of like too much. And like him being lukewarm, like I'm just like, okay, well this is kind of more my speed because it's not anything crazy. And so I settled for this relationship. Slowly my fire just started going down, and you know, I wasn't as on fire for God as I was before. And you know, I just felt comfortable, like that's what I was more comfortable with, is being comfortable. But also in this relationship too, like we learned to try to do things right. When we got back together, we tried not to like have sleepovers and sleeping on the same bed, and you know, not showering together, because you know, we teased each other. And you know, it got to the point where it was just like really bad, and we're just like, yeah, we're done, like we can't do this, we can't be teasing each other like this. You know, when I got baptized and starting to have my relationship with God, like I was learning to be modest, and I was trying to practice modesty. I just didn't know, like, because I always had like a style, and then now like this is something totally new for me. Like I didn't know how to dress, and you know, I was just like wearing like big t-shirts and like leggings and stuff. Like I didn't know my style. And at this time, like, you know, we ended up eventually moving back in together, not at my house, it was in his apartment in Phoenix. You know, I just didn't feel attractive at all anymore. You know, he wanted me to still dress immodest and wearing crop tops, and I just wasn't on that anymore. And you know, I felt alone, like I didn't feel attracted to him anymore, because people in the apartment complex were dressing different, you know what I mean? And I'm like, well, I can't keep up with that, I'm not gonna keep up with that. And I was like taking care of the puppy, so like I just felt like I had mom vibes, you know, like just big old shirt, leggings, wasn't really dressing nice or looking nice, like just didn't really care for myself in that way. Like I was just, you know, feeling lost, and you know, it was just something that was new for me. And you know, it was just very hard. For most of our relationship, we had the same schedule, working the overnight, and then we would spend time during the day, and then he was tired of the overnight and wanted to switch to days. And so our schedule was just different. And so like, you know, I would take care of the apartment, make sure it was clean, I would take care of the puppy that was his, that I told him not to keep, but he ended up keeping anyways. So I would take care of the puppy, and you know, I was just making sure that he had food when he got home. And I was just so happy. I'm like, man, this is my dream right here. Like I was happy for like 2 weeks, and then like he just ruined it. He was just very mean. He told me like, oh well, I don't need a maid, like I need you to support me, which, you know, I really didn't understand, because like when he would come home, like all he had to worry about was just work on his music. Like that's really all he had to do. Like everything else was taken care of. Like he didn't even have to make nothing to eat, the food was already ready. Like that just really like discouraged me. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you want from me. Do you want to come home to a dirty apartment? Like I don't know, I just didn't know how to move. You know, it was like a small little space, and I'm just like, well, I'm here all day, like what do you want me to do? That was just a hard time. Like, I was fed up and I just couldn't do it anymore. We were just arguing a lot and over anything and everything, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. And so I told him I couldn't do it anymore. Like, we weren't together, and he was just like, well, you know, you can still live here until you figure things out. And in my mind, I had already planned it out that I was gonna move back in with my parents. And so the puppy had his last round of shots, so I was like, well, I can stay here, you know, until his last round of shots, and then I can leave. And so that was the plan. And it was just very hurtful because he was already trying to act like he was single around the apartment complex. He like tried to always be like topless or like wearing like muscle shirts and stuff, like showing his muscles. And when we were together, I didn't like that, and so he would dress modest around me. But then, like, you know, when we broke up and I was still living there, he started wearing muscle shirts around the apartment complex, and then, like, I don't know, just making me feel like I was just a burden, like I was just there, you know. And I was just, oh my gosh, it was just a horrible feeling, like him going back on the internet. And, you know, we both had decided not to go on the internet anymore. Like, we were off the internet for like probably a year when I was in that relationship. And so he was just like doing things that, you know, weren't right. Like, I'm just like, man, you know what, this is just too much. And so one night, like, I just couldn't take it anymore, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm out of here. And at that point, like, I didn't care about the puppy. I'm just like, I just need to get out of here. That night, it was a Monday, and I had to go into work, and it was literally right before I had to go into work. And, you know, I was just packing my bags. I'm like, oh, I just want to get out of here. And I packed whatever I could in my small little car, and I just left downtown Phoenix and went to Surprise. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, driving to work, I was just like, Mom, like, can I move back in? And, you know, she was happy about it because she was honestly scared that, you know, something could happen and I would be all the way in downtown and it would be too far for them to even get to me. Like, my mom was like crying, you know, before I had called her, and so she was just relieved about it. Like, the next day I had to go back and get my stuff, and I was literally terrified. Like, I didn't know if he was going to be there or if somebody else was going to be there. I was just scared. I was like literally shaking, packing my stuff, like, oh my gosh. And then I just left and I never went back. I never saw him after that, and that was like the last relationship I have ever been in. And, you know, it was very supernatural what God did in my life, and oh my gosh, very supernatural. You know, I've been sober, celibate, in a relationship with God for 4 years, and I've been faithful to him. You know, I didn't go on social media right away. Like, God had to tell me, like, yeah, I need you to go back on the internet. And I'm just like, what? And so as soon as I got back on, like, I've been preaching Jesus, and, you know, now I know my identity in Christ, and now I'm just so happy. So happy that God saved me. I'm happy that he chose me. I'm happy that I chose him. Like, I could have still been in pride and in hurt and not choosing him or being mad at him, but no. I tasted the Lord, and I knew he was good, and I knew he was the way, and I knew he was the truth. In a way, this relationship kind of saved me spiritually, but physically, no, did not save me. Jesus saved me, and, you know, if he could do it for me, he could do it for you too. You know, my testimony is crazy. Oh man, I was crazy back then. But praise God. You know, if you're struggling with the things that I was struggling with, know that nothing is impossible for God. And if he could do it for me, he can most definitely do it for you. You know, just call on the name of Jesus and surrender it to him. He will help you. He will be there for you. I hope that this encourages somebody, you know, to even share your testimony of what God has done in your life, because we gotta testify and share what God has done in our life. I have no shame, because this was my life before Jesus, and I'm gonna shame the devil, and I'm gonna tell the truth, and that's what I'm gonna do. I love you, Jesus loves you, and God bless you.